Okay, so we have some text in our layout. The next thing that I want to do is I actually want to apply some, I guess you could say, some design to my text, or in Photoshop terms, I'm going to apply a layer style to my text layer, that is. In other words, I want to put a stroke on it, an outline, and I want to apply a little bit of formatting to it as well. So here's what I'm going to do. Over inside the layers palette, I'm going to double click on the type layer there. Double click over on the right hand side though, and that'll bring you into the layer style dialog box. And, I hope you've messed around with layer styles. You could really do some cool things here. I'm just going to move them towards the right just a little bit so we can see the dialog box, but you can also see my text down inside Photoshop there. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to apply a stroke or an outline to my text. So I'm going to head all the way down to stroke. I'm going to click on stroke there. And you can see now I have this black outline around my letters. And let's see here. I'm going to increase the size of my stroke. I'm going to crank him up to about 10, I think, somewhere in there. And you know what you can do as well, which is kind of cool, is you can decide where you want your outline or your stroke to be positioned. On the outside of the characters, on the inside of the characters, so maybe something like that, or in the center, so sort of riding that center line, the center edge, if you will. So I'm going to go with outside here. I'm going to make sure my blend mode is set to normal. I want my fill type to be a color. Now, the color that I want to use, again, I'm kind of going for a bit of a design here that I have in mind. So I'm going to click on this color swatch here. Once again, that brings me into Photoshop's color picker. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring my cursor off of the color picker, and you'll notice that my cursor changes to an eyedropper, meaning that I can actually sample color out of my Photoshop file. So in other words, it's this sort of this sky blue that I'm after, maybe down towards here somewhere, just single click. And that's really all there is to it. Okay, perfect. We have our stroke color set there. I'm going to click on OK. Looks great. Now, the next thing that I want to do is, well, obviously you can see here the outline, this blue stroke shows up great when the characters are over top of a cloud, but it completely disappears when the characters are over top of that blue sky. So essentially what I want to do here is I want to add a second stroke. I want to add a white stroke. But unfortunately, I can only apply one stroke inside Photoshop's layer styles, which is really too bad. It would be great if you could do 2 or 3 or 4, right? So essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fake a second stroke. Let me show you how to do this. I'm going to use another layer style option called Outer Glow. So look for Outer Glow there up towards the top. Choose him. I'm going to set my blend mode to normal. I'm going to set the opacity to 100%. I'm going to head down to this color swatch. Instead of this sort of this light yellow here, I'm going to change that to white. So again, in the top left corner there, click on OK. All right, let's see here. I'm going to set my spread to about 90. So crank this guy all the way up to about 90. There we go, somewhere in there. And I'm going to set the size, this size slider, to about 18 or 20. You can see there, as I drag the size slider there, that increases the thickness of that outer glow. So I'll kind of leave this up to you. I'm going to use about 18 pixels somewhere in there. I think that looks good. So essentially what we've done here is we've completely faked a stroke with our layer styles, a second stroke, which is great. Anyway, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, I was going to say I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, but I just thought of something cool that I'm going to show you in the next exercise. Do you know about styles? Do you use Photoshop's styles panel at all? I don't know how far you've gone with all of this, but essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to save all of the settings that you and I have just set inside this dialog box, the stroke and the outer glow. I'm going to save it as a style and then reuse it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New Style. It prompts me for a name here. So I'm going to call this Cloud Text Style. You can call it whatever the heck you want, of course. And I'll click on OK. That saves the style. And then I'll click on OK one more time. And of course, you can see the effects that have now been applied to my big fluffy clouds layer. And I have the FX icon there, indicating that I now have a layer style applied here. And I'll just finish off this exercise by saying this. if this is your first foray into layer styles and messing around with this sort of thing, the great thing here is you can always go back and edit these guys. That's kind of the big deal behind them. So I can always double click again on that right hand side of my layer, get back into the dialog box, change my stroke options. Maybe I don't want it to be blue anymore. Change the outer glow settings and even add in some other effects if I want. Bevel and emboss, or maybe an inner glow or a drop shadow, or who the heck knows, right? Anyway, there we go. We're looking good.